Fans of the Harry Potter series like to talk about their favourite characters, and these conversations often evolve into discussions about which characters are the most underrated. Now, there are many underrated characters in the world of Harry Potter. Barty Crouch Jr. is always a name that I will throw out there when discussing this topic. But over the last few years, another character has been nagging at the corners of my mind. And the more I think about it, the more I believe this character to be the most underrated individual in the Harry Potter series. This character certainly isn't the most likeable individual, but his personal journey and the theme that revolves around him is something that is rarely discussed by Harry Potter fans. And this character is none other than Percy Weasley. Before I get into the two main reasons why Percy is such an underrated character, I'm going to summarise Percy's arc for those who need reminding. From the outset, Percy is the least likeable of Ron's brothers. He's obsessed with rules, formalities and ambition, but I'm going to discuss this in more detail later on. The big moment in Percy's journey comes in the 5th book. When Harry arrives at 12 Grimmauld Place, Ron, Fred, George and Ginny tell him about Percy's fallout with the rest of the family, especially his father. One day, Percy arrived home and told the rest of the family that he'd been promoted to the position of junior assistant to the minister at the Ministry of Magic. Percy expected the family to be pleased, but his father wasn't. Given Cornelius Fudge's rising hostility towards Dumbledore, Mr. Weasley suspected that Percy was only promoted because Fudge wanted someone who could get inside information on Dumbledore and the Order of the Phoenix. In response, Percy went berserk, accused his father of having no ambition and blamed him for the family's financial problems. He also called his father an idiot for being close to Dumbledore. That same night, Percy packed his bags and left his family behind. Percy crops up physically several times throughout the Order of the Phoenix, firstly at Harry's hearing at the Ministry of Magic, and secondly during the scene in the headmaster's office when Dumbledore is forced to flee the school to escape being sent to Azkaban. He also makes a brief appearance in The Half-Blood Prince when Rufus Scrimgeour visits the Burrow during the Christmas break, but he doesn't reconcile with his family until the final act of Book 7 when he arrives at the Battle of Hogwarts and apologises for his behaviour. I'm going to get to the thematic substance of Percy's arc in a couple of minutes, but I want to talk about the brilliance of J.K. Rowling's foreshadowing first. Percy's dark descent and the betrayal of his family doesn't come out of nowhere. This watershed moment is foreshadowed from the moment Percy appears in the very first book. In chapter 6 of the Philosopher's Stone, Percy's pride about his new status as a prefect is evident from the get-go. And we see the sanctimonious attitude again in chapter 10 when Percy imposes his authority during the Halloween feast. If we jump to the Chamber of Secrets, Percy's lust for power becomes even more apparent. In Diagon Alley, the trio spot Percy reading a book called Prefects Who Gained Power, and on the back cover it says the book is about Hogwarts prefects and their later careers. It's a tiny part of the story, but these small moments are key to the believability of Percy's betrayal in Book 5. Likewise, in The Prisoner of Azkaban, when Percy becomes head boy, he's incredibly smug about the whole thing. But The Goblet of Fire is the book with the most obvious nods to Percy's moral fall from grace. Having gained a position at the Ministry of Magic, Percy becomes obsessed with his new career. His morals also falter when he talks about Mr. Crouch's house elf, Winky. As far as Percy is concerned, the elf deserves to be sacked. He highlights how Mr. Crouch's reputation would have been tarnished if he didn't sack Winky. In this instance, Percy is revealing how much he values reputation, ambition and formalities. And again, at the Yule Ball, we see how smug he is about his promotion at the Ministry of Magic. Quotations that I've used throughout this section are a tiny part of the overall story, but they are integral to Percy's decision to abandon his family in the wake of Voldemort's return. Rowling doesn't just spring this plot point out of nowhere. In addition to the fantastic foreshadowing, I also admire the theme that revolves around Percy's arc. Simply put, Percy's arc explores the clash between family commitments and personal ambition. It's something that a lot of people, particularly young people, have to grapple with in life. Yet I never hear any Potter fans talk about this theme. This might be because Percy isn't very likeable for a lot of the series, but this doesn't mean we should just ignore the theme that revolves around his character. What's more, this links to a broader theme in the Harry Potter series, which is love. Dumbledore, the wisest character in the series, frequently talks about love and how it is the most powerful force there is. In the case of Percy, he ultimately comes to the conclusion that love and family will always be more important than personal ambition. And the scene that best exemplifies this occurs during the Battle of Hogwarts. In the middle of the fight, Percy yells at Thick Ness, the new Minister of Magic, and tells him he's resigning. It's delivered in a tongue-in-cheek way, but it demonstrates Percy's transition from a career-obsessed, selfish individual to someone who values family and love. And this idea is reinforced still further when, tragically, Fred dies and Percy cradles the body of his dead brother. This, in essence, is why I think Percy is the most underrated character. His personal journey is rarely mentioned amongst Potter fans, and I understand why, but the exploration of personal ambition and how this can have a negative impact is a fascinating and underrated theme within the Potterverse. And when you factor in how well Percy's betrayal is foreshadowed in the earlier books, you realise how great this character is. Thank you so much for watching. Please let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Do you think Percy's an underrated character, or do you think I'm completely wrong on this one? Other than that, it's goodbye from me until next time.